My sister fired me, replaced me with our MBA cousin. 6 days later, the platform crashed, clients fled, and their investors called me instead. I received the email on a Tuesday afternoon. Your services are no longer required, severance details to follow. I did not argue or beg. I simply forwarded it to my attorney and quietly withdrew my seed financing from the startup. They assumed my cousin could handle the technical aspects. 3 months later, their investors fled. Hello Reddit. I spent 8 years starting my sister's IT company from scratch. Then she sacked me in a 2-sentence email and transferred my CTO position to our cousin. I did not fight back publicly. I simply withdrew my personal investment and watched as everything came apart. They bet on the wrong horse. This is what occurred. Sabrina, my 32-year-old sister, launched her cybersecurity firm in a tiny Seattle apartment in 2015. 8 years later, it managed $6.8 million in yearly contracts and had operations in Seattle and Portland. I'd been there since the beginning, first developing code alone while Sabrina worked for customers, then expanding the engineering team following our Series A, and then architecting our flagship security platform, which brought us 3 Fortune 500 clients. The company was the ultimate tech startup, offering specialized penetration testing, unique security solutions, and a SaaS platform that monitored for vulnerabilities in real time. We worked with hospital systems, financial institutions, and government contractors, organizations where data breaches may be life-threatening, not just a PR nightmare. Our clientele included some of the Pacific Northwest's leading hospital networks. Sabrina never missed an opportunity to tell investors how she built everything from the start, neatly omitting the $150,000 from our grandfather's estate that paid for the first year. She omitted such an aspect from her founder's story. Adjusted for inflation and Seattle's tech ecosystem, that's almost $250,000 in beginning capital she never had to work for. Not quite the bootstrap narrative she promoted. My cousin Talia, 26F, was a different story entirely. While I was working all night to patch significant security issues, she was pursuing her MBA at Stanford, courtesy of her parents. When she eventually joined the company 2 years ago, Sabrina gave her the title of Chief Strategy Officer, despite her complete lack of cybersecurity knowledge. My Aunt Monica, Sabrina's godmother, was Talia's strongest supporter. Monica convinced Sabrina that Talia needed a company car to meet with possible clients. While I was still taking the bus or using ride-sharing applications to client meetings, she never pushed for me in the same way that she did Talia. Talia's MBA centered on entrepreneurship, so she spent 2 years networking with venture capitalists and developing PowerPoint presentations. Her resume included a summer internship at a marketing business where her sorority sister's mother was the CMO. Nonetheless, Sabrina believed she was prepared to design strategy for a specialized cybersecurity organization. I remember when Talia revealed her true colors. We'd been wooing a major hospital system for months, and I'd spent weeks tailoring our platform to meet their specific compliance requirements. We're talking at 2 a.m. coding sessions, weekends lost to testing, and my partner eventually breaking up because I was married to my work. On the day of our final pitch to their CISO and security team, Talia arrived 15 minutes late, interrupted my presentation, and introduced herself as the architect of this security alliance. When the client asked detailed questions regarding implementation and compliance frameworks, Talia stumbled, so I stepped in with the answers. Later that day, she confronted me in the workplace kitchen. "Don't ever make me look stupid in front of clients again," she said, jabbing her finger at my chest. "I was just answering their technical questions," I responded. "Next time, write down the answer. And slide it to me. I'm the face of these deals now. You're just the back-end coder. Remember your place." I shouldn't have left that day. Instead, I swallowed my pride and continued working, reminding myself that I was doing it for the firm I helped develop, not Talia's ego. The healthcare deal totaled $2.3 million over 3 years. But guess whose name appeared on the commission report? Not me. Last year I learned that Talia was misrepresenting business development KPIs. She'd take credit for automatic contract renewals, claim prospects that other team members had nurtured, and stage client meetings that never happened to achieve her quarterly quotas. I showed Sabrina the evidence, a full spreadsheet study that took me a week to complete, but she disregarded it as aggressive business development. I'd spent the past quarter quietly documenting everything, preparing my case, and saving receipts. I hadn't planned to use any of it, but something told me to be prepared. Call it intuition honed over 8 years of watching my sister operate. Then, on Tuesday, I noticed Sabrina's email arrived. It was 4:17 p.m., and I had just closed a serious security hole on our primary platform, without Talia's assistance. We weren't the type of siblings who check in every day, so I assumed it was about the quarterly board meeting. I opened the email and continued to organize my notes, reading half of it while saving my files. Your services are no longer required, severance details to follow. I froze, my cursor poised over the save button. 2 sentences are given with the chilly efficiency of a system notification. I sat there for a minute, her words searing in my mind. The letter was clinical and emotionless, similar to terminating a software license. After all the years I've put into establishing her firm, all the family events I've missed, all the connections I've sacrificed, this is how she ends it? A 2-sentence email. The board meeting slated for Friday was not your typical quarterly review. It was around this time that we discussed the technological roadmap for the following year, and assigned resources across teams. Cutting me out of that meant cutting me out of the company's future. Through my office window, I could see Talia and Sabrina's office, where they were both nodding and staring at a whiteboard. Sabrina never consulted with me like that again. Now everything is made clear. They were not only planning for the following quarter, they were arranging my departure. I closed my laptop with my fingers hanging over the keys. A dozen responses raced through my mind, each one angrier than the previous. Finally, I just typed 2 words. Understood. Forwarded. If she decided to terminate it, that's okay. I wasn't about to beg for an explanation, but if she believed she could cut me off without repercussions, she had another thing coming. I retrieved the investment agreement from my desk drawer. My signature was in blue ink next to Sabrina's on the seed funding document. I carefully composed an email to our company lawyer, attaching the essential clauses about investor withdrawal rights. The sound of my keyboard was like hammering nails into a coffin. I took screenshots of everything, then opened my email to send a message to my personal attorney. I attached the screenshots and typed, "Need to meet tomorrow. Company situation is changing dramatically. Let's discuss my options." I pressed send, shut my computer, and walked out of the building, not looking back. If my sister wanted to play this game, I wasn't going to let her decide my fate. The next day, I acted quickly, canceling my meetings, clearing my calendar, and sending Sabrina an email stating my decision to step away from operations while seeking a comprehensive financial and technical assessment of the systems I'd created. There were no emotional appeals or attempts to rescue our relationship, only the cool, precise language of an investor protecting their assets. I spent 8 years of my life with that company. 8 years of missed vacations, friends' weddings, and postponed personal goals. For what? To be dismissed with a 2-sentence email. After graduation, I turned down a senior engineering position at Microsoft to assist Sabrina in launching her firm. And for what? So Talia can waltz in and take over? I quietly began the process of withdrawing my seed investment based on my minority ownership rights. This was not an emotional response. It was strategic risk management. If they were going to cut me out, I needed to defend my financial interests. I made many calls to my attorney to begin the separation procedure. It was not personal, it was business. Sabrina taught me the lesson herself. While I waited for my lawyer's response, I saved every piece of code I'd written, every system architecture diagram, and every technical specification document, anything that could demonstrate my contributions. Not to steal intellectual property, but to preserve my legacy. When you've spent 8 years developing software systems, you know exactly where the technical debt lies. An hour after I submitted my email, Talia texted me. "We both know Sabrina's been carrying you for years. Don't worry, I've got plenty of ideas to modernize that spaghetti code you've been maintaining. She should have put me in charge of the product from day one." I did not respond. There's no point engaging with someone who can't identify the difference between a firewall and a database. I just took a screenshot from my records and kept working on my escape strategy. Talia has always been a talker and not a builder. Her ideas were often based on buzzwords she had picked up at conferences without knowing the underlying technology. The next morning, I received a text from Jared, our lead security engineer of 5 years. "Sabrina just called an emergency all hands. Announced Talia's taking over as CTO effective immediately." The woman could not explain a simple SQL injection if her life depended on it. Talia had apparently been warning Sabrina for months that I was going to create a competitor product and duplicate proprietary code. Complete fabrication. But Talia had always had Sabrina wrapped around her finger. That night, I documented every change I made to the codebase, took screenshots of the commit history, and archived every technical choice I made. I knew exactly how this would turn out. 48 hours later, my phone flooded with notifications. Sabrina missed 67 calls, my Aunt Monica dozens, and my parents many. I sorted through the terrified texts, desperate voicemails, and more urgent emails. Sabrina's mails began with clinical and business-like inquiries. But as the hours passed and my silence persisted, her words got increasingly frenzied, flavored with something I hadn't heard from her in years. Desperation. "Aria, we need to discuss repository access. It's urgent. Call me about the AWS credentials. This is important. Aria, this isn't a game. The entire platform is at stake." Our cloud service provider had sent us a message filled with fear. "Aria, we need to speak immediately. There are critical access issues with your company's infrastructure." I sat back in my chair and smiled briefly. I had given them a good start, but reality was finally catching up. And I was only getting started. Sabrina and Talia didn't comprehend that 3 years ago, when I constructed our entire technical infrastructure, I rendered myself indispensable to the company. That was not the objective. I had thoroughly documented everything. However, some things cannot be transferred in a single day, such as the complicated authentication system I'd created, the elaborate deployment pipelines I'd configured, and the institutional knowledge about our security policies that I'd gathered over the years. On the 5th day, the messages had progressed from concerned to desperate. My Aunt Monica's voicemail messages were breathless. "Please," she said, stumbling over her words. My mother had a kinder approach. "Aria, honey, I don't know what's happening with the company, but I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Please call your sister." I didn't respond. Mom meant well, but I knew my sister too well to believe this was simply a mistake. On the 6th day, I got an alert from our company's code repository. I gently opened it, prepared myself for whatever new disaster had occurred. As I scanned the logs, my jaw fell. Sabrina and Talia had attempted to offer full administrator access to an outside development organization, despite all of the security controls I had put in place. They'd even started the process of migrating our whole codebase to a new repository where I wouldn't have access. The only reason it hadn't worked was because the authentication system required multi-factor clearance for such big changes, a security measure I'd installed following a near miss with a data breach 2 years prior. Sabrina clearly forgot about this point in her zeal to force me out. That was it. My sister wasn't simply attempting to eliminate me from the firm. She and Talia were attempting to delete my contributions completely, cleanly, and permanently. They presumably assumed I would be too stunned or hurt to react. They had no idea that by crossing that line, they had given me the perfect reason to hit back. I took a deep breath and called my lawyer. We had a lengthy chat, and by the end of it, the wheels were in action for something far more significant than simply withdrawing my seed investment. "They've made this simple for us," my lawyer explained. "Attempted intellectual property theft is a clear breach of fiduciary duty. But are you certain this is the path you want to take? Once we file these papers, reconciliation becomes nearly impossible." I did not hesitate. "I'm certain. They started this war. I'm just making sure I win it." The next morning, I assembled every document I had on the company's technical infrastructure. I spent hours putting together a detailed dossier, highlighting every shortcut, security compromise, and technical debt Talia and Sabrina insisted on despite my objections. Years of suppressed frustration fueled my focus. Sabrina's habit of cutting corners on security audits to save money, Talia's insistence on rushing features to market without proper testing, the consulting fees paid to my aunt's graphic design company that never delivered a functional website, and the offshore development team that had access to production systems in violation of all security best practices. It was all there and meticulously documented. I finished with a damning collection of evidence. I filed formal complaints with our investors, detailing potential breaches of fiduciary duty, and froze the code repositories while conducting a full security audit. I also prepared documentation for our largest clients, outlining the potential security implications of recent management changes and attaching the most concerning sections of my dossier. I wasn't sure whether it would work, but I was determined to find out. Finally, as a strategic move, I sent a full technical risk assessment to our largest client, a hospital network whose CISO had served as a mentor to me over the years. Dr. Malik had worked in cybersecurity for decades and had awarded Sabrina her first major contract. He prioritized technical excellence and open security practices. I knew he'd be upset to learn about how his organization's data security had been compromised. I expected retaliation but was prepared. I had already secured all of my personal finances, transferred my assets to new accounts, and ensured that my name was not on any company credit lines. Let them come at me. I was no longer exposed. That night, I sat in my apartment facing Lake Union, watching the water sparkle under the city lights. Part of me regretted how things had escalated, but another half, the part that remembered every dismissal, every time Talia was favored, every undervaluation of my contributions, felt only frigid satisfaction. My phone vibrated with a text from Jared at the workplace. Complete chaos here today. Your cousin tried to deploy to production and somehow crashed the entire platform. Your sister's been in crisis meetings all day. Hope whatever's happening works out, Arya. I smiled bitterly. They were realizing how much they had relied on me, and it had only been 6 days. That night, my phone called again. Mom. I hesitated before responding. Arya, I know you're hurt, and I understand why, but can we talk? Just you and me? I paused to examine my alternatives. Despite everything, I did not want to pull her into this mess. When things become serious between Sabrina and me, she would always try to keep the peace. All right, I finally said. Let's meet tomorrow. The next day, I met my mother at a coffee shop on Capitol Hill. She was already there, waiting at a window table and monitoring the door. When she saw me, she straightened slightly, but her demeanor was still anxious. Mom has always served as the go-between in family disputes. During the many disagreements Sabrina and I had as kids, she had mastered the ability of remaining neutral. Arya, what's going on? She questioned, her voice quiet. Sabrina's falling apart. Monica says the company is in crisis. They think you're trying to sabotage everything, and Talia is just making it all worse, promising things she can't deliver. She deserved to know the truth, but I didn't want to burden her with information that would only exacerbate family tension. They tried to erase me completely, I told them. Sabrina and Talia were attempting to copy all my code and systems to a new repository, trying to cut me out of the picture entirely. I'm just ensuring they can't appropriate my work on their way out. Her eyes expanded. That can't be right. Sabrina wouldn't just, no. There must be some misunderstanding. What about Talia? Would she? I inquired pointedly. She looked away, unable to deny it. Talia had always been devious, including with her. She borrowed my mother's car in college and returned it with a dented fender, stating it had happened previously. Naturally, Sabrina covered for her. I moved a small folder across the table. It included carefully chosen screenshots, just enough to demonstrate my point without overwhelming her. Repository access logs, suspicious code transfers, and emails in which Sabrina and Talia openly requested an outside engineer to speed up the migration process. She flipped over the papers slowly. Oh, Arya, this is deliberate. They were really trying to lock you out. Yes, I replied, leaning back. And that's just the beginning. They've been compromising on security protocols for months, maybe years. I found evidence they gave production database access to an offshore development team we've never properly vetted. I leaned in. Mom, if I hadn't acted when I did, our healthcare clients could have been exposed to serious vulnerabilities. Patient data could have been compromised. She closed the folder and flattened her palm against it. You have to talk to Sabrina, she stated firmly. There must be some explanation. Your sister's not usually this reckless. And Talia? I questioned. She didn't respond. I gave them a chance to explain. You know what Sabrina did? She fired me with a 2-sentence email, then put Talia in my position the very next day. Just please don't destroy everything, she whispered. Monica says investors are already asking questions. If this escalates, I don't know what will happen to the company. I'm not the one who started this, Mom, but I promise you, I'm going to finish it. That evening I got a notification from our code repository. An emergency freeze on code changes had been placed. My attorney had used the intellectual property terms I insisted on in our operating agreement, the ones that required my consent for substantial architectural changes, along with evidence of unlawful access attempts. The server has detected many unusual access patterns, and several large-scale code extraction efforts are still pending. I imagined Sabrina and Talia in that glass-walled conference room, seeing the deployment pipeline stop, their perfectly planned strategy collapsing hour by hour. I wasn't only defending my code, I was pointing out basic problems in their leadership. I knew enough about the business to comprehend what a code freeze entailed. Client updates would not get out. Bug fixes would be postponed. The continuous integration pipeline that they rely on for client deliveries will be halted. It was the technical equivalent to cardiac arrest. I awoke the next morning to find my phone constantly vibrating. My email inbox was overflowing with notifications from our repository service, my lawyer, and anxious messages from Sabrina's business colleagues. The security audit had started earlier than intended, and it was obviously identifying issues. I went through the repository's latest warnings. They had restricted access to over 300,000 lines of code across various repositories and highlighted an additional 120,000 lines. For questionable commit patterns dating back 3 months, it was a technical bottleneck that effectively halted product progress. Sabrina had left 5 voicemail messages overnight, each more urgent than the last. "Aria, please. I don't know what you think you're doing, but you're destroying everything we built. Call me back immediately. We can fix this." I deleted the texts without replying. An hour later, Mom called back. "Aria, what did you do?" she said, her voice even though tense. "I did what was necessary," I explained quietly. "They're in complete panic mode, Aria. Sabrina is talking about lawyers, about suing for sabotage. Monica is beside herself, and Talia is making wild promises about fixing everything if they just give her complete control." I was not surprised. They'd never been adept at handling a technical issue. I gave them a chance. Sabrina made her move. Talia took my position and I protected my work. I'm not backing down. There was a long pause on the other end. "Fine, meet with them," she finally said. "One last time, for me." I paused. I owed Mom at least that amount. "All right," I replied, "but this is the last time." As I hung up, my lawyer called to provide an update. The repository's preliminary audit had already raised enough red flags to warrant further examination. Sabrina and Talia were concerned about potential intellectual property infringement if things remained this way. "You need to decide how far you want to take this," he told you. "Right now, you've got leverage. They're desperate. This might be the time to negotiate a settlement that cuts you loose with your fair share." I pondered it. A settlement would be cleaner and speedier. But something within me resisted. It wasn't simply about money anymore. That evening, we met at Sabrina's downtown Seattle condo. I'd attended innumerable meals and strategy discussions in this sleek high-rise apartment, spoken about product roadmaps on the balcony overlooking the Sound, and celebrated our first $1 million in revenue at that dining table. It felt like we were entering hostile territory. My mother opened the door with a worried grin and a hasty embrace. She appeared weary. Inside, Sabrina stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, arms crossed, showing confidence despite the circumstances. Talia sat on the kitchen island like it was a throne, feigning indifference while scrolling through her phone. "Let's get this over with," Sabrina said. I sat down at the dining table, noting how every award and press mention in the apartment emphasized Sabrina's accomplishments, while my efforts were reduced or ignored. Was it always like this way, or am I just seeing it clearly now? "So, what's all this about?" I inquired. Sabrina turned to me, her cheeks heated. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Aria? Freezing the repositories, triggering security audits. You're trying to destroy everything we built." I met her eyes directly. "I'm destroying things? After you fired me without warning? You think I wouldn't notice unauthorized access to my code? You think I'm just going to sit back while you and Talia try to erase my contributions to the company I helped build?" Talia looked up from her phone and pointed at me. "You've always been jealous of Sabrina's vision. You've been undermining my strategy since day one." Sabrina's face hardened. "You have no idea what you've done," she replied. "I've got demos scheduled with potential investors, commitments to clients. Talia has a completely new direction planned for the product. If you freeze these repositories, it could sink everything." "That's not my problem," I responded. "You made your decision when you tried to push me out of the company and replace me with Talia. I'm just protecting my work." There was a prolonged hush. Then Talia leaned back, smirking. "Don't worry, Sabrina. I'll rebuild the entire platform now that Ari is out of the picture. Her code is outdated anyway. I've got friends at Google who can help us create a much more scalable architecture." I laughed. Talia had never looked at or comprehended our code base. "Talia's right," Sabrina remarked. "We were planning to refactor the entire platform anyway. This is just accelerating our timeline." When I looked at my sister, I noticed something for the first time. She was afraid. Despite all of the threats and posturing, she was terrified that her firm was slipping away. Instead of confronting reality, she was reinforcing the fantasy that Talia could somehow salvage everything. Sabrina leaned in, her voice low and threatening. Fine. You want to play hardball? You want to tear down what we spent 8 years building? I'll show you what real scorched earth looks like. I retained her eyes. I've come too far to back down now. Mom stepped between us. Stop, both of you. This isn't solving anything. I got up and grabbed my jacket. You wanted me here, Mom. I arrived, but I am done attempting to reason with them. I turned to go out, firmly locking the door behind me. As I waited for the elevator, my phone vibrated with a new email. One from my attorney. Sabrina and Talia had recently filed a lawsuit alleging that I had ruined the corporation and illegally shut them out of vital systems. I gave out a quick giggle and returned my phone to my pocket. So this was how they intended to play it? Fine. I'd offered them the option to go away. Now, I'd make sure they had nothing left to fight over. The case struck me harder than expected. Sabrina and Talia had gone all out, accusing me of everything from corporate sabotage to intellectual property theft. Their allegations were ridiculous, but the consequences were serious. If they can convince a judge that I illegally restricted access to company systems, I might face significant damages. I expected them to be desperate, but not this irresponsible. It seemed as if they were asking for complete discovery. I spent the next week buried in legal documents, with my attorney working hard to oppose every new move they filed. They had even tried to draw our parents into the situation, forcing them to testify against me, most likely attempting to break my resolve through familial pressure. Then 3 days before the first court date, I got a communication from our lead security engineer. Arya, we need to speak quietly. There are several things you should know. Jared and I met that night at a small pub in Fremont. He was already present when I arrived, looking apprehensive. He waved me over and looked around the room. Arya, I shouldn't be here. If they find out. He fidgeted with his beer glass. The security audit triggered some serious red flags. With the lawsuit and everything happening, I could lose my professional certifications if I'm associated with this. I need to protect myself. Just tell me what this is about, I asked, sitting across from him. He leaned forward, his voice lowering. Your cousin. She's been exposing client data for months. Insecure APIs, misconfigured cloud storage, improper access controls. Sabrina only found out recently, but she's been covering it up. It's bad. I had anticipated some technical lapses, but this sounded far worse. How bad? Potential HIPAA violations. Maybe FTC territory. I've been documenting the issues and trying to fix them quietly, but this lawsuit, if it goes to discovery, it all comes out. I can't risk my career, my reputation. He slid the flash disk across the table. Everything you need is on here. Access logs, misconfigured servers, vulnerability reports. Your cousin has been systematically undermining our security protocols for months, and your sister has been helping hide it. It's enough to trigger regulatory investigations. That night, I went through the files. Everything was there. Patient data from our healthcare clients had been exposed due to insufficiently secured APIs, with Talia's fingerprints all over the changes and Sabrina's permission on the majority of them. There were false security assessments, concealed vulnerability reports, and even indications that Talia allowed an outside marketing agency access to production settings containing critical customer data. Sabrina had approved everything, either consciously or in willful ignorance. The following morning, I sent everything to my lawyer with this note. Let us conclude this. By the time the court date arrived, Sabrina and Talia were cornered. Their repositories were locked, putting their client connections at peril. And now, with this fresh proof, they were facing possible regulatory inquiries. Sabrina appeared fatigued as she entered the courtroom, her customary confidence gone. Talia wasn't even present. She had supposedly gone to California the night before for an emergency meeting with advisors. The judge ruled in less than 2 hours. The evidence was overwhelming. The complaint was dismissed, and the court mandated a comprehensive technical and security audit of the company's systems. I observed Sabrina's expression as reality set in. She hadn't only lost her lawsuit, she had lost everything. Outside the courthouse, she approached me with lowered shoulders. Arya, you have to believe me. I didn't know how severe the security issues were with Talia's changes. I was just trying to give her room to grow. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. You chose her over me, I replied gently. Every time. And now you're paying for it. I walked away, leaving her standing there, appearing much older than her 35 years. A week later, Mom called. She had helped Sabrina find a smaller apartment in Ballard. She didn't ask for my assistance and I didn't offer it, but I transferred enough money for 3 months' rent, more for Mom's sake than Sabrina's. Did you know about Talia? She's ruined the company, Arya, and Sabrina let her do it. She chose Talia over you, over her own company's integrity. I could hear disappointment in her voice. It wasn't just me who had been betrayed. The business had imploded catastrophically. The audit indicated that Talia had been violating security procedures for several months. When the security flaws were discovered, the company faced potential regulatory probes, and the majority of their large clients terminated their contracts. The Portland office was closed. The Seattle headquarters was reduced to a single floor. Talia had disappeared to California. Last Mom heard, she was trying to find a job at a friend's startup, avoiding Sabrina's calls and showing no remorse for the damage she'd done. I signed the final papers, terminating all technical and financial links with the company. With my settlement and professional reputation intact, I was 4 weeks into starting my own cybersecurity consultancy in Vancouver, British Columbia. Distinct countries, distinct markets, yet comparable industries. I had obtained modest office space, brought in 2 trustworthy engineers from the Seattle organization, and began developing something entirely my own. No family drama or nepotism. Simply technical brilliance and sound business procedures. 2 months later, Sabrina called immediately. Her voice was different, more restrained, but with an undertone of entitlement. Arya, we need to talk. The situation, it's dire. Talia has completely abandoned ship and disappeared to Silicon Valley. We were wrong. We need your help to rebuild the platform. I left her words hanging in the air. Part of me felt validated. The other portion was simply tired with the entire saga. I'm sorry, Sabrina. That chapter of my life is closed. Come on, Arya. We have nothing left. We were wrong about you. Wrong about Talia. We can start over. Rebuild the company together. The right way this time. I still have connections throughout the industry. I took a deep breath. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it. I've moved on. Our parents are worried about their retirement, the investment they made in the company. Her voice cracked momentarily. I felt a tinge of sympathy, but quickly buried it. She had been manipulating me with guilt for years. Not this time. I already talked to Mom about that. She and Dad diversified their investments last year, on my advice. They'll be fine. You can't just abandon your family, Arya, after everything I've done for you. I nearly laughed at that. Everything you've done for me? Sabrina, I worked 8 years building your company while you handed everything to Talia on a silver platter. I'm done. I hung up and blocked her phone. Maybe someday I'll be ready to have her in my life again, albeit in a limited capacity. But I would never again rely on her judgment or put my professional reputation in her hands. After all, my sister taught me one important lesson. In business, loyalty is only as good as the contract on which it is based. Family is something different entirely.